Wednesday, July 29th, 2020 meeting of the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board. Clerk, please call the roll.
Barnes. Bauer.
Here.
Chaplin. Here. Delgado.
Here.
Vasella.
Here.
Hannon.
Here.
Dial.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Our first item is the approval of our agenda for today's meeting. If everyone would review that briefly and ask for a motion in a second.
So motioned.
It's been moved and seconded to approve our agenda for today's meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me, I need to interject myself at this point. This is Fred. All votes at any meetings conducted by Zoom have to be by roll call.
Correct. They do have to be a roll call. We knew that. We've talked about that. But I didn't, I neglected to write that down on my little thingy right here. So with that, the clerk, please call roll on that.
Bauer.
Yeah. Yes.
Chaplin. Yes. Delgado.
Yes.
Vasella.
Aye.
Hannon.
Here.
Dial.
Yes. Thank you, Fred. Our next item is audience participation. Have we had any requests for participation in today's meeting?
No.
Okay. Moving on to the approval of minutes from our closed session board meeting, January 29th. Those minutes have been passed around to everyone and others have received them by email.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the closed session board meeting minutes from January 29th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Bauer.
Yes.
Chaplin. Yes. Delgado.
Yes.
Vasella.
Yes.
Hannon.
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Our next item is the board meeting minutes from open session, May 27th, 2020, which are in your packet that was distributed.
So
Ask
moved.
for motion.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the board meeting minutes from May 27th, 2020, open session.
Excuse me,
Roll call.
I may have made an error when I made the slide, but aren't we approving the minutes from the last board meeting? The June 24th board meeting?
That's not what my notes say.
Yeah, I see that it says
My
that.
error. You're right. It is June 24th.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the June 24th meeting minutes.
All right, we've had a change in our motion to June 24th of 2020. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Bauer.
Yes.
Chaplin. Yes. Delgado.
Yes.
Vasella.
Yes.
Hannon.
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is communications.
There are no outside communications.
No communications from Carl. Any communications from the board that they'd like to share? Moving on, our UIUC Ridership Study presentation.
Ryan, do we have anybody present? Yes, we do. Okay. Bumsu, are you on and unmuted and ready to go?
Yeah, I'm here. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Bumsu, we have your slide all queued up and ready to go. And so if you want to just say next, we can advance the slides for you.
Okay. So I actually deleted some of the slides. I might just say skip. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Bumsu Lee. U of I faculty at the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. Thanks for this opportunity. Hello?
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry, Bumsu. We're just increasing the volume here in the room a little bit.
How do I get,
Can I go on or?
I can't get the projection. What do I do?
This is audio only. We're not seeing him right now.
I see, okay. No wonder. Fire away.
I see the slides on the Zoom meeting.
Yes, I think you can continue.
Okay. Okay, so I did this study with my students. Their names are on the title page. We did this study in the summer and fall of 2019. So please be reminded, this is pre-COVID-19. After this March, everything changed, right? So that COVID-19 is not considered here. I believe if everyone is in this meeting understand how the study was arranged between U of I and MTD. So I'll skip all background information. Next. So here's the outline of my presentation. This study has three main components. First, we did an analysis of bus ridership trends. And we also looked at the changes in environmental factors that affect transit ridership. And also, most importantly, we conducted a travel survey of U of I community members to better understand how they travel and what kind of factors affect their travel decisions. Next. Next. So let's see recent transit ridership trend first. Next. So before recent ridership decline between 2009 and 2007, no, between 2007 and 2015, we had a significant ridership increase. In 2000, for your information, 2009, we had a redesign of campus routes. MTD added, expanded 4 campus routes to 6. So since then, we had a significant transit ridership increase. We had a peak in 2015. After that, it started to decline. In the past 3-year period, transit ridership fell by about 13%. Next. It's not only in the Champaign region. Transit ridership declined everywhere in the country. Overall, transit ridership started to fall after the 2014 peak. But if you count only bus, it started even earlier, 2008. And then ridership decline accelerated after 2014. Next. Next. In Champaign-Urbana, if you look at the level of services, they are typically measured by vehicle revenue miles and vehicle revenue hours. They also kept increasing or remained stable in recent years. So in other words, service cut was not any reason for a recent transit ridership decline. Next. These graphs show monthly ridership trends by campus versus community routes. As you see, ridership on community routes declined twice as fast as campus routes. Next. If you look at the ridership per service mile and per service hour, these are typical measures of productivity of bus services on community route. So we lost most of the ridership on community routes, not on campus routes. Next. This table shows stop level ridership. So nearly all of the ridership decline occurred at off-campus stops, bus stops outside campus. Okay, there was a little change. Next, please. Okay, so as you see on the map, actually the campus town area, especially between University and Springfield Avenue, they actually gained significant ridership between 2016 and 2018. Okay, so overall bus ridership declined, but campus town area actually gained transit ridership. Next. So now we're going to turn to environmental factors that may affect transit ridership. Next. So first, student enrollment has been steadily increasing, not decreasing in the past 20 years. So student enrollment is not does not seem to be a reason for a recent ridership decline. But I guess you're aware that U of I moved some of the degree programs, like an MBA program, they switched all MBA program online. So if, I don't think it's likely, but if university move additional graduate degree programs online, this could be a potential threat to transit ridership in coming future. Next. Spatial distribution of student population and its a change are another important factor for transit ridership. Campus town added about 3,000 students. Between 2000 and 2015, not in recent years. We're talking about 2000 and 2015, that 15-year period. That increase in student population account for about 70% of total enrollment growth of the same period. In other words, student population are concentrating into campus neighborhood. Next, for the same period, 1,300 housing units, rental housing units were added neighborhoods around campus. Next. So we analyzed building permit data of city of Champaign and Urbana. That data showed that about 800 additional units with more than 2,000 bedrooms were expected to be added in 2019 and beyond. So the concentration of student population and rental housing units, student housing units, will continue in near future. Concentration in campus town area, that trend will continue in the future. And as we will see in a few minutes, the dominant mode of transportation in those campus town area is walking, because it's very close to campus, and so which is good in itself, but it might have a negative impact on bus ridership. Next. Many people talk about the potential impact of emerging rideshare program and bike share technology. Uber and Lyft are notorious about data sharing. So here we have only Via Ride ridership. They had about 300,000 rides for the first year after they launched Via Ride bike share program. It's more than I thought, and this is about 2.5% of bus ridership. So one of our planning students did a capstone project on Via Ride, and he did a survey, and his survey result shows that Via Ride mainly substitute walking travel, and it was about 50%. And secondly, bus ride. So 23% of Via Ride is replacing bus ride, according to his survey. So if we do a real quick and dirty analysis, Via Ride might have contributed to bus ridership decline by slightly over 0.5%. But we saw 13% of bus ridership decline in the past 3 years. So just like small portion, really small portion. Okay, so next. We conducted a campus travel survey in October last year. We invited randomly selected 6,000 students and 6,000 faculty and staff, and about 1,000 faculty and staff and 700 students responded. Next. Next. These two maps show the home location of those who responded. Student respondents are highly concentrated around campus area, and faculty and staff respondents are more spread out. Next. Apparently, students use MTD bus more often than faculty and staff. And for students, bus and walk are two primary travel modes to campus, each accounting for nearly 40% of their commute. And driving alone is the primary mode for faculty and staff. And combining with carpool, carpool and drive alone, 62% of faculty and staff commute to campus using private cars, and only 20% take bus. Next. They drive more for non-commuting trips. In case of faculty and staff, almost 80% of faculty and staff use cars, and only 4% take bus for non-commuting purpose trips. Next. Commute mode choice of both the students and faculty and staff has a lot to do with their home location. It has a lot to do where they live. As you see in the maps, both bike and walk commuters live very close to campus. Next. If you look at the commute mode shares by distance to campus, walking is predominant for nearby neighborhood, for less than a mile zone, and bus is dominant in 1 to 2 mile zones for students. And also for faculty and staff, bus share is relatively high in 1 to 2 mile zones, and bus and bike shares significantly drops after 2 miles. Next. One of the main reasons of the small commute share by bus after 2 miles is that it takes too much time simply to commute by bus. In most locations outside immediate campus neighborhood, bus commute takes more than 20, 30, 40 minutes. Next. And if you compare commuting time by bus with commuting time by driving, bus commute takes 2 to 4 times longer than driving commute in many locations outside 2 mile zones. Next. 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 If you look at the satisfaction level, it seems both faculty and staff and students are quite satisfied with MTD bus services. Even though faculty and staff use MTD bus less often than students, but they show a higher satisfaction than students, maybe because they are more likely to use bus by choice. Maybe they are generally happier than students. They don't have homework and project. So next. We asked a question, why don't you take bus more often? Top reasons include, first, I need a car during the day for errands. We cannot do anything with that. Secondly, bus takes too much time. Bus does not run often enough. So the frequency of services and travel time, they are primary reasons why people do not take bus more often. Not many people picked up the access to bus stops as a primary reason. So a takeaway from this is that to increase transit ridership, we need to have more frequent and faster bus services. Next. We also asked about people's general opinion and attitude toward transit and cars. 64% like the idea of using public transit as a means of travel, which is actually higher than driving, 52%. So that's many people, community members, have positive attitude toward transit. However, only 30% take the bus habitually and daily basis, and 35% think it's easy to take the bus to their frequent destinations. Next. 73% answered that they are aware of environmental problems that are related with driving. So people know that driving is not environmentally friendly mode, 73%. However, only 45% answered that that concern actually impacts their own mode choice. 73% are aware of environmental problems of driving, but only 45% answered that concern affect their own decisions. And only 38% feel obliged to use environmentally friendly mode. Next. We also asked about the impact of parking permit price. 80% of students would not be willing to pay more than $900. And for faculty and staff, permit holders, 80% of faculty and staff permit holders replied that they will think about alternative commit modes if permit price reaches $1,100 per year. So people's tolerance level for parking pricing is very low. I'm not suggesting here we gotta raise parking permit price, but if you increase the parking permit price, it's gonna have significant impact. 80% are not willing to pay $1,100. Okay, next. Let me skip the summary of findings because it's repeating what we have discussed so far. So recommendations. This research project focused more on the analysis than designing policy recommendations. So here, let me just wrap up my presentation by just floating ideas on a few general directions that the MTD and university can think about to promote bus ridership, rather than, I'm not suggesting specific policy programs here. So first, let me point out that there's more room to improve ridership among faculty and staff than students. Only 13% of students can use cars. Okay. Want a bus to compete with a bike and walk, right? So there's not much room for student population. But for faculty and staff, 62% of faculty and staff are driving to campus, and only 20% take bus to campus. So any policy programs that target faculty and staff, that will have a more impact. Second, to improve bus ridership among faculty and staff who mostly live far from campus, we need to make bus service faster. You saw the map that compare travel time by bus and driving, right? Bus takes more than 4 times longer than driving. We cannot recommend people to take bus. Okay. So improving bus travel time to campus, especially for outside neighborhood. that's the primary that's a primary fix to improve bus ridership. Next. Third, I'm not suggesting to raise the price of parking permits here, but just want to point out the price of parking is a very significant factor that influences commute mode choice of faculty and staff. And this is consistent with a lot of studies. A lot of studies did analysis of the impact of parking price from any, not only university environment, but office or general government offices. Parking is a really important factor that affect people's travel behavior. Finally, MTD and university can develop strategies and programs that tap into high environmental awareness among campus community members. We just saw a survey result. A lot of people are aware environmental issues that are related with the transportation, but that environmental concern does not actually affect their own mode choice. So we can think about some nudge programs that tap into the people's environmental concerns. Okay, let me stop here. If you have any questions, please.
Any questions from the board for Bum-Soo on his report?
I don't really have, Linda Bauer, I don't really have questions. I just thought this was very well done and an eye-opener, at least for me. I've been on the board for 10 years and we have had that ridership drop, and there was talk about all that campus infill causing the reduction in ridership because kids can walk, and that really seems borne out by this study.
Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Sue. You kind of hit the nail on the head with the speed thing, and I've given this a lot of thought myself because it's often an impediment for. It's been an impediment for me with riding the MTD long distances across town, and I'd be curious if you had an idea of how we would study the trade-off that people are willing to make between walking further for a stop and having more frequent service. So often I can walk to a stop and it takes an hour, sometimes several hours for a bus to come. And I might be willing to walk an additional mile if that bus was there in 10 minutes, because then I would get to where I'm going, wouldn't snake along once I got on the bus. And I'd be curious kind of how that worked in other districts, if that could get our ridership up. Obviously, it would make things more environmentally friendly too if buses are going more point to point, not as distributed. It would make it harder for people that might be disabled to get to the bus. So there's definitely a whole series of trade-offs, but it is an interesting point, kind of seeing what is keeping these faculty and staff, long distance travelers, and probably other commuters in the community from taking the bus. So I'd be curious if you'd thought about a follow-up study on that, or if we had any other thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is a really a great question. There's a traditional trade-off between access and speed. If you have more transit stops, or if you have a more complicated bus route, you can get close to people, transit riders, but you should, as a result, you're going to slow down the bus operation, and also you're not gonna have many frequent bus services for given routes, right? So there's a traditional trade-off between speed and access. At least according to our survey result, access to bus stop was not the primary reason why people are not taking buses. I think, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but when we talked about primary reasons for not taking bus, speed, frequency were at the top, but access was not a serious problem. So at least according to our survey result, access to, probably people are willing to walk farther to take bus. Personally, if I walk like a quarter mile, half a mile, if you can take bus, if you have like a bus services every 5 minutes, they can take me to campus in just 10 to 15 minutes or 20 minutes. I'm willing to take bus, right? So I think speed and frequency is more important than access in Champaign-Urbana situation. Then how do you make bus faster? Probably it might involve a redesign of the bus network. You got to make it straight, focus on high demand areas, simplify bus route. Instead of going like around and round, you got to make it straight, make it faster, and you provide more frequent bus services. And this is actually a national trend. Several transit agencies in bigger metropolitan areas like Houston went in under this restructuring of a bus network system, probably 5 to 6 years ago in Houston, and their transit ridership show a lot better performance compared to other metropolitan areas. And Indianapolis did this redesign of bus network in just a few years ago, and I think they are going through this restructuring process now. So this is a kind of national trend, simplifying bus network and make a more direct routes and serve strategically in high demand areas.
I guess a follow-up to that, I'd be curious what you're seeing on national trends. With sufficient advertising, does the population begin to self-sort? So if we were to keep these routes theoretically in the same place year after year, would people who use the bus choose to rent near the bus line, and over time would people sort of sort? If somebody wants the driver, doesn't care, they wouldn't pay a premium to live close to a route, but people who rely on mass transit might actually move to be closer to our lines. Have you seen anything like that nationally?
For usual bus services, it might not be easy to expect that kind of concentration of population, but for a high capacity transit services, including rail transit, light rail transit, bus rapid transit, those high capacity transit services, definitely there is a concentration of new development and population, and they are capitalized into higher rent. And so there's transit-oriented development is a really important trend in urban planning. So you have this high capacity transit system and then concentrate new development and population. That might cause some gentrifications. That's a whole another issue. But the access to better transit services definitely capitalized into new development and enterprises.
Additional questions from the board for Bumsu?
Mhm.
Hi, Bumsu. This is Tomas Delgado.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you for the presentation. I had just a couple questions. Within your analysis, the findings from faculty and staff, was there any kind of level in which faculty and staff had used a combination of driving to campus and parking and then utilizing the bus system for last mile transit? Was that anything that was brought up in the analysis?
Our survey asked about 3 main travel that they made yesterday. So probably we did not collect that information about first mile and last mile. I think let me see. I forgot the number, but our report, I think you're gonna have access to the final report that has some information about their first mile and last mile mode share for their bus trips. I mean, driving is usually door-to-door travel mode, right? But first mile, last mile mode share for transit trips is included in our final report.
Okay, great. And the last question, would you see any kind of effect on faculty and staff ridership as a result of sort of the abandonment of parking minimums and developments within campus town? Has that had an effect in addition to the cost of parking, but just the level of parking accessible?
You mean parking is too much abundant in campus area?
No, I mean, a lot of the new development within campus town, I mean, much of it has been residential, and with the Champaign and with Champaign kind of moving back from having sort of an embracement of parking minimums, has that had an effect on ridership?
I think that moved toward the more limited amount of parking spaces that desired. I mean, that's good move. Anything that makes parking more expensive and parking space less available, that contribute to alternative transportation mode, whether it is walking and bicycling or public transit. From sustainability standpoint, that's a good move, from my opinion. I don't know how the campus town specific policy affected people's travel choice, but I think it's a right move.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board with a question?
I'd just respond to Thomas, just from personal experience, us having a lot of parking on campus. The policy change was almost a response to landlords because, for instance, 10 years ago when I started with Armory House, we had all of our parking in our garage rented every year before the semester started. The last few years, we've had 1 or 2 spaces out of 20 rented. We can't give them away. So we've seen a drastic change in the market for rental parking on campus. With, it used to be your daughter or son goes to school, you'd say, well, you better have a car in case you have to get supplies from your project at the Hobby Lobby store. Now everybody takes Uber. Our kids aren't bringing cars to school at all. We can't, even if we drop the pricing on the parking, we can't fill it. So it's really been a demand drop more than a demand drop creating this excess supply. We can't fill parking on campus for the life of us.
Thanks, Phil. Anyone else? Additional comments? Seeing no hands waving on the monitor. Professor Lee, thank you for your work on this and your staff and everyone that contributed to this. We certainly appreciate the information and look forward to digging into it deeper at some point.
Thank you very much.
All right. Our next item will be a report of the managing director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, this report is on June statistics. And so June ridership was down 51.5% compared to last June. Obviously, that's due to COVID-19. And we closed out the fiscal year with a 22.9% loss compared to last fiscal year, which was FY 2019. So last fiscal year was 11.398339. That was an increase from the prior year. And so we had some of the trending that Professor Lee was just talking about. We had started to ease in the other direction, and then along came a pandemic. And so now we've completely altered the landscape there. And we are in the final stretch of MCOR and its impact on our ridership. So we'll continue to see that throughout this, the remainder of this calendar year. And I think we're supposed to be wrapping up early next calendar year, although I feel like from a personal observation, it feels like the Green Street portion in Urbana for some reason is taking longer than I anticipated, but maybe I'm just not paying attention as closely as I was to the portion on campus. So hopefully we're still on track there, and we'll see an end to that at least in the spring as they wrap up final plantings and that kind of thing. Moving on to revenue, our operating revenue was actually 7% above June of 2019, and year-to-date operating revenue was 2.7% below FY 2019. And the expenses, we saw a 38.6% drop from June of 2019. And the year-to-date operating expenses were 1.6% below FY 2019. And I just want to point out that the month-to-month comparison from June of 2020 to June of 2019 is not due to stellar management on our part, but simply that we're reporting on this before all the year-end adjustments have been made. But as we show you June of 2019, that is including the year-end adjustments from last year. And so while it appears as though we ended really strongly there, and I think we are doing a good job, when all is said and done, I don't think we'll see a 38.6% drop. The year-to-date revenue and expenses compared to budget, our revenues ended up $20,000 above budget, and our operating expenses were $5.4 million under budget. And again, some of those will be adjusted with the year-end closeouts. And with that, I just want to bring everybody's attention to our friend Jay Rank over here. He has been a long time MTD employee. I think he's in his 13th year, and he's been a planner and then planning manager. And just last week, he elevated himself to operations director by performing admirably in a very competitive process for that position. Chuck Wilson, another very, very long-term employee of over 40 years, will be retiring in November. So Jay and Chuck will be crossing over with one another over these next 4 months, I guess. And Chuck will be handing the baton off to Jay. And if it's all right with you, I'll just give Jay the microphone a little bit for a moment, no longer than 15 minutes. And he can give a little presentation on his life and story.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, like Carl said, I've been here about 13 years. I started off as an analyst position, so I didn't have any planning responsibilities. Then when Rob Patton, our former director of operations, retired, I got into planning, and then planning manager, and now this. Most recently, I've been responsible for designing the service and analyzing it and doing the work board for the operators to pick. And so now I'm looking forward to combining the service design with the service delivery and taking on all of the issues that we have in the operations department and try to move everything forward and do a great job. So thanks for having me.
Congratulations, Jay. It's a well-deserved promotion.
Thank you.
And then with that, I'll take any questions up through page 40 if there are any.
Questions for Carl on his report? I had something I saw a minute ago, and now I've slowly slipped my mind. Maybe it'll come back to me here in a second. I was like enthralled with Jay's presentation just then. It was like pulled me in, and then I was like, "Whoa! What was I just thinking about? It's gone." Whoa.
Linda Bauer.
Linda, go ahead.
So the revenue is because we got our usual state budget and didn't spend as much. Do you have any sense going forward what state funding might be like with everybody? I'm sure other transit systems have similar percentage declines. Has anybody been talking about that?
Well, if your specific question is, do I have a sense of the state's finances? My sense is that it's a mess.
Well,
And
but
that
transit funding.
Yeah. We know that it's going to be difficult. We did close the year out, and we were paid all of our normal requisitions through the fourth quarter. However, there's a year-end reconciliation request. And that has not been paid yet, but we have submitted that to the state. So we don't really know how FY20 will close out with that revenue. But we've got the request in, and we'll see what it looks like. I know that the downstate transit fund with the state is the last 2 months of the fiscal year. The transfers into the fund were about 20% less than they were in those same months last year. So that is not a good indicator. But of course, the state economy has started opening up since those 2 months transfers. And so hopefully we'll start seeing a bit of a rebound. I would anticipate, Linda, that we will not get a full accounting from the state throughout this current now fiscal year. I think they will not be able to meet their obligations to us because they don't have the money in the bank. I'm not trying to throw shade on the state, that they don't have the money. And so I don't think they're going to be able to make full payments. We do have the CARES Act funding from the federal government that will help fill in that gap. And I'm hopeful that will mostly get us through the fiscal year. And as I mentioned before, we have our reserve funds that we can lean into a little bit if we need to as well. So that's my sense.
Anything additional from the board for Carl on his report? I do remember now, I've ratcheted back here a little bit. On MCOR, when we originally started MCOR, we had a timeline that we had to be done by for federal funds. Probably the federal funds have all been spent probably at this point, or we're still on a timeline for this fall.
Yeah,
Is that accurate?
the answer is both yes to both of those questions. The federal money has all been spent. We are with this last phase of the project, we're in just local funds now. The timeline, I don't have that right in front of me, so I don't remember exactly what it is, but the timeline still applies. We're well on track to finish the project and finish expenditures, both federal and local, by the deadlines. And so I think we're comfortable in that timeline. Things have been going very well.
Okay, super. All right. With that, we will move on to our action items. The first of which is the semi-annual review of the closed session minutes, pages 41 through 45. And as explained by our board secretary and attorney, Jack Waller, he has a suggested motion for the release of the closed session board minutes from September 28th of 2005, the meeting minutes from January 30th, 2013, December 10th, 2014, and January 29th of 2020, and that is part 2. Additionally, he feels that the list for attachment 2 in its entirety needs to remain confidential, and attachment 3, the verbatim recordings, to be destroyed from July 2018 through December 2018. I think that is the entirety of that group of documents. Margaret.
Well, I wonder if Fred's still out there. I'd like to ask.
Yep, there you go.
Sorry about that. If Fred's still out there, I wanted to ask if we needed to vote these three things each separately, or can we vote it all as one motion?
You can vote them all as one motion.
Thank you.
So moved.
So let's have someone, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Does everybody understand what the motion is?
Yes.
Okay.
And we need a
Entirety.
second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to release the minutes that are listed in attachment 1 to remain confidential, the minutes, closed session minutes in attachment 2, and to destroy the verbatim recordings in attachment 3. Could we have a roll call, please?
Bauer,
Yes,
Chaplin,
Yes.
Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Yes.
Hannon,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Our next item is updates to the long-term intergovernmental agreement between Champaign County and the CUMTD for the C-CARTS work.
Okay, hopefully Evan is still awake, and I will hand this over to him. He's attending via Zoom. Evan, would you like to just give a little intro to this?
Certainly. So a number of you, I'm sure, have seen the previous version of this, and this is largely the same. C-CARTS is the Champaign County Area Rural Transit System, and it's operated by MTD in agreement with the county. So this is just kind of renewing that agreement so that we can continue doing that. Y'all got an email last week. The only real change is that there's just one clause on page 9 under the requirements section. It's item B, and it just says that MTD is required to kind of meet obligations of FTA grantees that hadn't been included in the past because MTD is already an FTA grantee, so we were already meeting those requirements. But IDOT wanted it said in this agreement also. So that's the only substantive change outside of just kind of amounts being updated.
Evan, I want to point something else out to the board, and I'd like you to confirm this for me, but I think there's an error on page 11 of the 12 pages of the document. So page 57 of the packet. For the fiscal year 2021, it says the fully allocated cost per hour is $26. I believe that should be $126.06. The hourly rates, so the percentages are right. The $44.12 is correct, but before we sign this, we'll make that change if you concur.
Yes, and that actually makes sense. Just from a previous conversation, yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So to be clear, for fiscal year 2021, that fully allocated cost per hour is $120.06.
No, sorry, it's $126.
Oh, it's a 6. I'm sorry. I wrote over the top. So it's 126 for 2022. It'll be 128.51.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this, except for changing the figure to 126.06 on page 11.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this agreement with Champaign County for providing C-CART service. Roll call, please.
Bauer,
yes,
Chaplin,
Yes.
Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Yes.
Hannon,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Our last action item is staff seeking board direction on some issues with the power feed for the hydrogen station, and we'll allow Jane or Carl to comment.
Yeah, I can start. Ryan, could you go to the next slide? So as you all know, we are installing a what we call a hydrogen station. This is what will generate the hydrogen that will fuel our buses that are coming early next year. And so you can see on the slides here, the left image, that's about what the layout will look like for the hydrogen station. And we need to get power to that station. And that power is going to come from along the right of way of University Avenue up there. The image on the right, that yellow line that goes across our drive, east-west, that the power will be taken from the existing Ameren pole by Ameren overhead to a new Ameren pole, but then we are responsible for taking the power from there to our hydrogen station. So we have two options here. We can run the power overhead. And actually, I should correct myself. In that case, Ameren will do it and Ameren will pay for it. But that will cause the loss of 6 trees. Those are the ones I've circled in red. The hydrogen station will already require that we remove 6 trees. Those are the ones I show in blue. But we have the opportunity to likely save those 6 trees I've circled in red if we choose to pay to run the power underground. We've done some work to get an estimate of what this would cost. And we can cover this cost with our federal funding at 100%. So no state or local funds there. And our estimate is around $50,000. Again, it's an estimate, and what we're looking for today is some direction from the board on whether they would like to pay that extra. They would like to use our federal funding for that extra expense to most likely save the trees. Of course, we can't guarantee. The power would be, the electricity line would be bored. We looked into trenching. We've kind of figured out where it needs to be located in order not to impact the roots. I think I'll stop there, see if Carl wants to add anything and take your questions.
I would like to just add one piece of information. That was a great summary, but we had some late breaking news that we just got today, actually, from a tangential project. We've been talking about adding a solar array expansion on the north side of University at the sanitary district property. And it just came up today in a conversation with the engineer, the consultants on that project, that when and if we do that, the line from the solar array also has to come down this direction to get to the hydrogen station. And so if of course, the board can decide what you want, but if the board decides to let Ameren pay for the above ground and we lose those trees, then the solar line would also be above ground. But if we go underground, we need to accommodate the underground boring and have room for that power line from the solar array. Otherwise, we could do all this underground for this project for the primary power, and then end up either having to rebore all over again or go above ground on that and lose the trees anyway. So I'm only bringing this up because we've talked about a dollar figure here. I'm not an underground boring expert by my wildest imaginations. I'm not even close to an expert. But I just want to put it out there that if you do get to the point where you're comfortable with a boring underground, I might ask you to add in some extra dollars so that we can absorb the cost of running another conduit or a larger conduit to accommodate this future power line that we might have from the solar array. I don't know what the order of magnitude of that cost difference might be. We didn't actually talk about that. We were hoping to be able to get some quotes from some local contractors on that, but we didn't get them before this board meeting. So just if you could keep that in mind, please.
And you're just a question on that. So did the consultant feel like a single conduit would be appropriate for this type, or did he have even an opinion on that?
We were talking to the consultant on the solar project, and I don't know that he would have been the right person to answer that question, so he didn't give an opinion on that. That could very well be possible, that both power lines could go in the same conduit. I'm not an electrician either. Maybe Kirk knows the answer to that, and we have Kirk on the line. So speak up or forever hold your peace, Kirk. But Kirk Kirkland, by the way, is our facilities director, and he's a licensed electrician, so he's much more knowledgeable than I am.
They would actually have to go in separate conduits. And so for the hydrogen production plant, we would put 2 4-inch conduits in, we'd put a spare in. When you're running the 12 kV primary lead, you almost always put a spare conduit in. So for the hydrogen production plant, we would have 2 4-inch conduits. For the solar farm, we would have another 4-inch conduit, and then possibly a 2-inch conduit for a fiber line. So it would be 4 conduits altogether.
The fiber line that he mentions is to have a data connection between the control panels of the solar array and the system at the station.
Would these be all sort of bored at the same time, or are we talking
Yes.
about? Yeah.
Yeah. That's the goal, and that's why the chair and vice chair, we talked about this yesterday, and so this was just late breaking news just this afternoon, even right before this meeting. And so I don't have an order of magnitude of cost of what this extra conduit would cost to attach to the same boring head. So we're not talking about multiple bored tunnels. It would be one, but it might be bigger. You have to have a boring head that would accommodate these now, at least an increase of quantity of conduit of 1.
They're probably going to bore a 4-inch hole, and they're going to run a 4-inch conduit from it, and they're going to move over a little bit, and they're going to bore another 4. They're not going to do
They often pull these all at the same time.
Yeah.
Polo does 3
I
at a
think
time.
it's one head that has multiple conduits attached to it, and it pulls all of them behind it. That's
You can run, pardon me, you can run up to 4 4-inch conduits with 1 bore head.
Cool.
Quite often what they do is they split that into 2 separate bores, depending on, especially if you have an oddball conduit out there. So, and the size of the, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Well, we talked a little bit about yesterday about there might be some material out in the bore field there that we might be surprised by possibly. So,
yep, that's a possibility.
So with that, do you have a recommendation?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Margaret.
Okay. Well, I guess it's sort of a comment, because one of the other things we talked about with this is my first question when they said 6 trees had to go was, what kind of trees are they? What species are they? Worthwhile trees? Are they valuable trees? And what kind of condition they're in? Because I was also thinking about our little dispute with Urbana about removing the trees for MCOR, and that they were not in very good shape. But this isn't the same thing. It seems to be that it's worth spending a bit of money to try and save these trees. As Jane says, boring doesn't guarantee that they will be saved, because any kind of disturbances to roots, especially of the larger trees, I don't think the crab apples will be damaged that much, but you're talking about the roots of an oak tree. All kinds of things could happen. But I was also sort of thinking about showing us sort of in a little better light that, we don't willy-nilly kill trees, that we really do care about preserving what's possible to preserve, and that we're willing to put up a little bit of money, even though it isn't our own money, to do something about that.
Any additional comment from the board? Phil?
I just want a little bit of clarification. We talked about going overhead. Is IDOT willing to allow us to run overhead from the solar farm across 150, or would we have to go underground?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That is definitely something we should have clarified. What we're talking about is not what goes over University. Everything that we're talking about is south of University on our land or within the right of way, but south of University. When we do the solar array, that cross connection absolutely will be underground. It's what happens then when it gets to the other side of University, to our side, the south side of University. Does it pop up above ground then, or does it stay underground and go to the
So there's no way IDOT's going to let us go overhead, right?
I don't believe so.
They're usually particular about. My only thing is just maintaining a lot of underground lines. Believe it or not, you have more lightning problems, more reliability problems. I know these aren't direct bury, so it's a little better, but I hate underground service. It's a freaking nightmare.
Well, you don't have sleet storm worries with the portion that's underground. I mean, it will connect above ground on both ends, but yeah, I mean, it's a roll of the dice, I guess, and both have hazards, maintenance hazards.
So if we do opt for above ground, obviously Ameren's willing to do the drop here up to 150 feet or whatever. Would we be able to use the same poles for our run from the solar farm? We'd have to put a second set of poles in because they won't
go underground anyway.
Or go underground anyway. They won't let us piggyback on their poles and
Correct.
vice versa.
Yes, they've already answered that question. Not trying to paint you in a corner.
No. The other part of it, I guess I would ask, is if we pull 4 conduits, if we go overhead now and we pull the conduits later, who pays for that second conduit pull later?
I'm sorry.
So for the solar farm conduit pull. So if we go overhead now and we don't spend a 50 grand, and then we got to pull 2 conduits, one is a 4-inch and then another is a 2-inch for the fiber from the right of way back to the hydrogen station in 8 months when we do the solar farm, who pays for pulling that conduit? Would that be federal funds or would that be something else?
Well, that will be that project. So the solar project, that would be on the cost of that project. And that is a state grant that we have applied for. State capital grant.
And as far as money coming from the feds or the state right now, the feds are looking like a better option as far as getting paid on time right now. Because they can print money.
Sure, but I do want to say, to be fair to the state, not that I necessarily feel like I need to be fair to the state, but this capital money is from the capital funds that are bond. It's revenue raised by selling bonds, and those bonds, that selling process has already begun, and so that money is just about as certainly within the world of the state, it's as secure as it could be. And if we're awarded the grant, there's no guarantee that we're going to get the award, but if we do, that money is pretty secure.
Very good.
Additional questions on this?
Yeah, Linda.
Linda, go ahead.
I love trees. I have some mixed feelings though. I mean, there is one very good white oak. Crab apples, they're nice trees, but these aren't very old. It just seems that we're not guaranteeing that these will survive anyway. I know that there have been a lot of events in the past couple of years that have really caused problems with our trees. I called an arborist to come look at mine, and they're scheduled out till April. So, you know, we could spend a lot of extra money putting things underground, and the next day there could be a fungus or something that impacts these trees. Another question I had was, if these trees are removed, does Ameren pay or do we have to pay?
Yeah, so a couple of things. You're right. We don't have any guarantees. So if we do choose to go underground, staff cannot guarantee that those trees will be saved. We have every expectation that they will. We believe that they will, but I certainly can't provide a guarantee of that. As a reminder, we might have to go underground anyway for the solar. And so we could just be doubling the whole expense. Yes, if we go above ground, Ameren will pay for the poles and the line, but MTD has to pay for the tree removal.
Okay, so that could be, got 6 trees. I mean, that could be $10,000.
Well, they think it's $50,000.
No, to remove the trees?
Oh, remove the tree, sorry.
It's usually about $1,000 a tree or more.
Well, I think it depends on the size of the tree.
Mm-hmm. You've got 3 that are pretty big.
Well, and I think it also depends on how easily it is to take them down. Now, those trees are in a nice straight line with apparently no shrubs and, you know, encumbrances around them. So it's probably going to be easy to take them down. I don't know. It's just hard to make a confident decision when you don't know the real cost of it.
Yeah. Sounds like potentially boring underground could be more expensive and have more consequences. That could kill the trees too, or weaken them, who knows?
And that's possible. I think for one thing, if we go overhead at all, especially with the Ameren line, there can never be any trees there. So if we were to, let's say we did a directional boring and we bored the trees and we accidentally, one of them didn't tolerate it, that tree can be replaced. But if you do anything else, there's not going to be a tree there. I mean, I guess that's the one sort of additional upside to boring is if something happens with one of the trees or they do get a disease or something, you can go back and replace them. Once we have overhead lines there will never be any vegetation underneath them for any circumstance at all. So just another kind of a consideration. And I drove out by there before the meeting today to kind of just put an eyeball on this myself and look at them. And I think one thing that another sort of, I don't know if it's intrinsic value or what you call it, but that will add some additional from the road. If you're looking back through there, that's going to kind of block off the hydrogen plant to at least a certain extent. You know, it's not, you can look through the parking lot and see it there, but it will provide those, leaving the trees in place will provide some additional, you know, blocking. So I guess it's another thing to think about. So my question from a couple minutes ago was, originally staff had sought $50,000 or potential. So these changes that we've come across this afternoon, are we still looking at the same number? Or are we looking at a different number?
Yeah, so I'm just being totally honest and transparent with you. I have no idea what that additional cost would be to hook up and to go with a larger bore head and pull 4 conduits. I have nothing to base this on except just a guess, really. But I would say if we could alter the ask from 50,000 to 60,000 to help cover that, you know, we're going to do everything that we can to keep those costs as low as possible. But if you can give us authority up to 60,000 to negotiate the change order with a contractor, I hope that we can do it within that. And if we can't, we'll have to come back to you.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Who planted these trees?
The trees 1, 2, and 3 have been there for over 20 years, and they have so I don't know who planted them, but they precede our ownership of this property. Trees 4, 5, and 6 we planted. We planted in 2015 when we created the little, I'm using air quotes here, the little honor garden that we have there for the retirees that all retired on a wave because they had been with the district for 40 or more years. And so we created that little area, and those were new trees then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Additional questions on the revised figure?
So I guess we were trying to renegotiate lease stuff with the sanitary district and the park district. Are we still reasonably confident that the solar farm across the way is gonna?
We are, I wouldn't call it a renegotiate, but we are still negotiating with them. And I, I mean, negotiate is a term that you use, but really it's pretty straightforward. And all we're doing right now is having the sanitary district's legal counsel and our own legal counsel just craft the document. And so they are nearly complete with that. And so we have a couple of final meetings that we probably have to do to, the only part that we really have to negotiate is the lease rate. And so that's coming up soon. But yes, I think all districts, including the park district, even though they're not directly related to this, they all want to see this happen. All 3 districts are supportive of solar and want to see that solar array there. I don't anticipate any showstoppers coming up between now and then.
We had the issue where they accidentally leased the ground they were going to lease to us to the park district. That got sorted out.
Yeah, yes. We gained some of that back, but not all of it. And so it was compromises all around. The solar consultants made some adjustments to the angle of the solar panel so that we could fit more in, because we have a little bit less room to work with. The park district still got the room that they felt like they needed. And so I think we got what we could get.
Because I mean, if we're going to be boring for that anyway, I think your 60,000 compared, at least for what Pavlov and Voller were doing for fiber bores, you're high. I think we're going to be okay, but
I hope so. I hope so. I'm just trying to be,
no, it's good. It's good.
I'm just trying to be conservative on that.
One other question, I guess, related to power. So eventually, if all of this works really well, we might be with expansion of the hydrogen plant. Will that require additional power feeds? What's thoughts on that?
You want to go ahead? Well, thanks, Jane. Yes, it absolutely does require additional power. And we have had those conversations, and we think that what we're putting in place now will accommodate the power that we would need for some level of expansion. It's a variable that we don't know yet on how much expansion we would need to do. So we're getting 2 buses now, and the production station that we're building now will fuel those 2 buses, but it actually will fuel up to 12. And actually the data that we're getting recently, I think it will fuel more than that. So 12, 14, maybe. And so the power that we're laying now will accommodate that, all of that. So we can expand the fleet without expanding the station.
Sure.
When we get to the maximum that this station can produce, then we have to expand the station, and we have that built into the the pad that we're going to put the station down. We have room to expand, but it will require power. I don't believe it will require us to, and Kirk, you can actually, you're probably the best person to be answering this. I should shut up. But I think that we can accommodate the additional power needed. Is that your understanding, Kirk?
Yeah, there'll be a little bit more. It won't be the 12 kV, I think. It may require another transformer on site, but I don't think we'll need anything larger from Ameren. But that's all, it kind of depends, electrical usage is kind of coming down on some of these things that, you're not using nearly as much power now as you were 4 or 5 years ago. And so I think we'll probably be good from Ameren. It just might need another transformer.
And that will be on site within the footprint of the
Yes,
station. Okay,
that's correct.
very good. I was going to say, if we're going down this road, rather than have to come back later and add something in, while we're there, just let's.
Yeah, and that's been our approach all along, up to a point.
Sure.
We want to, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right up to a point, and then when we hit that point, that is another decision point, and we decide if we want to continue.
Understood. Additional board comment. Go ahead, Kirk. You have something else?
I was just going to say we're also putting in a spare 4-inch conduit from. If we do this, we will put in a spare one from University down to the production plant. So barring damage to any of the other conduits, we would have one in place to utilize.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was. Okay. Additional comment from any of the board members, Margaret?
I have a motion that I'm going to propose.
Go ahead.
I move that we authorize the managing director to pay up to $60,000 to have the power line run underground in an effort to save the trees that would otherwise have to be removed with an overhead power line.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it with the comment that I think this will probably also save us money compared to the overhead proposed.
It's been moved and seconded to provide staff with direction on, no, I'm all right, with the electrical connection for the hydrogen station up to $60,000. Roll call, please.
Bauer,
Yes,
Chaplin,
Yes.
Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Yes.
Hannan, Bruce, Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. That was our last action item for our meeting today. Our next regular Board of Trustees meeting will be scheduled for August 26, 2020 at 3 o'clock, and the location is still to be determined whether we'll be back here again or whether we may be back in the city council chambers at some point. Anything else from the board or staff? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.